So Liver King is interesting in this aspect again, because I would argue he presented himself as being genuine, at least earlier in the days.
Yeah.
Even though he was probably lying about all that stuff for a long time, right? But he presented himself as being genuine, and that sold. And now, from last I saw, he presents himself as being a liar, and that still sells. So,
it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
So would you have to be genuine? Do you have to be a liar to sell anything? No, you can pretty much make it up. What you need to have are people who care about you and what you represent, liar or not. I think it doesn't really matter too much, but in the end, I will say this, probably better to be real and genuine than to lie overall, because eventually it seems most lies come to light. For example, Diddy.
Oh, you went there. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Wolf of Young Street podcast. This week, my guest is Andreas Papaioannou. He's a venture architect, a marketing strategist, and a co-founder at Epsilon Venture Group. Welcome to the show, Andreas.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you.
So, obviously, you've described ways that just as an entrepreneur, a person can, at least from the podcast perspective, they can, grow, create a product, they can, market it. But in this age of social media where people can do all this stuff by themselves and there's so many free tools, why would a person want professional help?
Well, I guess you can only know so many things or have time to do them. So for us, a lot of times we usually partner with founders that are more technical, right? They'll write the code or they'll do that kind of stuff themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't have the business experience or the interest, or maybe they are fairly business savvy, but maybe marketing is something where they lack.
Yeah.
So for them, it's like, okay, you've spent thousands of hours learning how to code. Are you going to spend another 1,000 hours learning how to market? Which in a way is kind of like coding for the human mind and how to make it, monetizable.
Right.
Probably not. And it's probably not realistic for you to do that either, because especially if you're building a software product, you need to do that. So you only have so much time and so much leverage and so much experience. So when you come to a professional, whatever they are, I don't know, would you draft your own will, or would you draft your own lease agreement? Would you? Probably not, right? You go to somebody who knows how to do that for a reason, because they spent 10 years learning how to read the law and apply it, right? So it's the same effect. I certainly wouldn't try to build a battery for an electric car, but I might go to you and ask you.
Right. So maybe let's back this up a little bit. Where a person comes to you, they've coded a certain product, a certain program or something. How do you start with designing the flow for them?
Okay, so if they already have something, well, now we have to look at what the purpose behind it is. But let me start from the very beginning, because this is actually fairly practical. There's a lot of big firms out there, research firms, that will try to do feasibility studies and whatnot. They'll spend millions of dollars, and that's fine for certain types of projects, usually infrastructure related. But if you're just a guy who's got a really interesting idea for AI or some other tech company, the simplest thing you can do is just, before you even build anything, just see if people even care enough about it. And so there's a little formula that we use, that we do to kind of help people walk through this, or we do it ourselves. So let's say you have some sort of AI product that you're creating. We need to look at the market for AI. So generally, we'll go try to find some studies that kind of show where the market is going in terms of certain trends. And the biggest thing overall is it increasing, decreasing, or is it stagnating? And that gives us a picture of whether or not it's worth maybe going into, just on the outset, before we even put any hard work into building anything. So if it's stagnating, then you'll probably make a little bit of money, but it's probably not something that's going to be good long term. If it's a declining market, then you probably definitely don't want to get into it. There's a few famous Silicon Valley quotes. I don't fully remember them off by heart, but they basically say something along the lines of bad founders or bad product in a great market beats great founders in a bad market every time.
Right.
Just because statistically it just works out to be that. So we look at that. Okay, so let's assume the market's great. Okay, great. Let's start doing something. Okay, well, how about before we spend 1,000 hours coding something, why don't we just create a simple web page that just kind of tells people in a few bullet points with a couple of supporting visuals what the concept is. I have a little form for people to fill out. Maybe it's a wait list, or maybe it's a pre-order form, or maybe it's whatever. Then from there, we drive traffic to it. So that could be advertising, that could be just posting stuff on forums, that could be putting stuff on your own social media, or sending it to some friends. Friends generally isn't a great idea because they could be biased, but still, you put it out there. Let's say 100 people come to the web page. The rough benchmark that we work off is if 30 of those 100 people actually fill out the form, actually want to learn more, maybe book a call or join the waiting list, then we have something that might be worth building. About 30% is the benchmark that we look at.
Right.
From there, the next step, the ultimate step to any business being successful on the internet is if strangers on the internet halfway across the world are willing to give you money. Right? so
right.
If we can say, okay, 30 people signed up, if about 3 of them would be willing to pay us money for a pre-order, then okay, we might have something for real, because most people, they say they have something and then they don't buy it, right? You go to a store, you walk around, you go, oh, this is cool, but I don't care enough to actually spend money. So the same thing happens with everybody, right? Even online with the products and whatnot. So if we can actually get 10% of the people that converted to actually be, oh yeah, here's $20, I'd love to do a pre-order and then get this thing when it comes out, then we have something for real. Because somebody said, I will pay you, which means there's probably more people out there that will probably pay us. So we can start getting the ball rolling and getting this thing out there.
Yeah.
So this is a very practical, very simplistic approach for, whether or not we should actually go and build something around this idea.
Right.
Assuming we've all of that, and that's all good, and we're ready to rock and roll. Okay, well, now we're looking at who is the target audience for this, and what are the specific things that they need in order for it to be a good product for them. And as you can see with the way I'm talking, a lot of this stuff starts with the product first, because ultimately this is what we're selling. And so if it's bad, then we have a pet rock situation where we're just trying to sell pet rock, and maybe that's great for 6 months, and then we got to move on. Right. And that's not the work we want to get into, because it's not very lasting. It doesn't really build any enterprise value, which is what's important to us, because we'd like to take revenue share or equity of these companies that we partner with.
Right.
So it doesn't matter about selling pet rocks. Who cares about that? We want to sell something that we want to sell something and build something that in 10 years from now is still around and still profitable.
Right.
Yeah.
So nowadays, a lot of marketing involves influencers, and there has been a lot of controversy lately with influencers pushing stuff that, I don't know if you're familiar with the controversy of the Liver King selling these ancestral tenets and basically advising people to eat testicles and all of that good stuff. And then, it was found later on along the line that my guy was doing them steroids. So I wonder. Yeah.
Biggest grift ever.
I know, right? And there are lots of grifts out there, and it's kind of a tough time to be an influencer right now, because people find it hard to trust. What if you're selling something, I don't trust you. That's the way it goes now. I wonder where you stand on that, and how also maybe clarify for us how you use influencers in the marketing.
Okay, so there's tons of really sketchy influencers out there, and they scam businesses too, right? There's a lot of that happens. So there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I'll make a post, I'll do this, blah blah blah, or I'll just take some product, and then they do nothing, and then the business gets scammed. And there's usually, for most businesses, there's not much you can really do about that. unless you're willing to spend the money for it and whatnot. So generally speaking, yeah, influencers overall on both sides of the spectrum, from just the everyday person and businesses, have a bad rap, right? So,
Right.
so it's not great. What you do find though is, well, at least the way that we go about influencers, there's plenty of opportunity to make genuinely good kind of ambassadors and kind of partnerships in a way where we find somebody who just actually has the same values or the same interests or talks about the same things as what the product is. Like,
Right.
again, I'll bring up your background as being a battery scientist again. I hope you don't kill me for that. But
No.
let's imagine you made a whole podcast on the science of batteries. Okay.
That would be a really boring podcast, my guy, but carry on.
It might be. But who would be a great business to partner with? I'll just throw out the obvious answer, right? We say Tesla. You would be a great ambassador for Tesla in that regard.
Right.
What would be a terrible guest would be the Liver King partnering with Tesla, because that makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
What is the guy doing talking about being primal, and then you have this company that's talking about revolution?
Right.
Very, very different messages. It does not make sense. It does not work. So the best way to work with influencers as a business is just try to find influencers that actually kind of make sense. Like if you thought about being a couple, this is the best thing you can do. You walk in with this person to like your prom, and people look at you too, and they say that makes no sense or that does make sense. If it makes sense,
well. I'm gonna push back on that. You're saying that makes no sense or that makes sense, but we know that there's situations where a really so-so guy walks in with an absolute 10, and people like, sure, it might make no sense to you, but trust me, that guy's reputation just went like this. People are like, so
yeah, it has to align. What I'm talking about here is the overall communication of the message, right? Going back to when I mentioned the whole ping pong thing, right?
Sorry, I guess my point there is the message is I can get that guy, and you can't. And there's a whole premise there beyond. Obviously, we're joking here, but think about it this way. Okay, there's a product, and please don't sue me. I'm not coming after you guys. But I think it was called AG1 or something, right? Right? It's a whole supplements thing. I don't really pay attention to that stuff. But that's how they got attention. They got Joe Rogan to talk about them. They got all the big podcasts you can think of to talk about them. Is the product really all they say it is? Who knows? but my point is that they walked in with these 10s, so to speak, and that was instantly what got them the attention. The relationship itself maybe doesn't make as much sense as you might think. I'll give you another example where in Canada now, Ryan Reynolds, for example, has partnered with a lot of brands that you might think, well, that makes no sense. How is he in telecommunications and gin and all these things in just one person, right? But sometimes a person just lends their visibility to a certain product. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. But from the marketing angle, if you really peel that stuff back, Joe Rogan talks about supplements and working out and fitness all the time. It's like one of his main talking points, right? So again, the messaging lines up. Ryan Reynolds, what's Ryan Reynolds' biggest thing? He's a likable public figure. So all these brands that he's been in with, he owns them. He owns a portion of them.
Right.
So he's the business owner. He presents himself that way. He doesn't go, hey, I'm just Ryan Reynolds, some actor. I'm like, hey, I just bought a part of this and now I'm using my likability for it. So he blends the two sides together. He creates that partnership. If you're just a brand by yourself, unless you're gonna find an influencer who's gonna actually blend what they do together with you, which is very expensive and usually very hard to do.
Yeah.
Just go find people that have the same message as you in some way. AG1 and Joe Rogan, sure, Joe Rogan doesn't look like maybe what you would imagine a scientific health supplement to be like, because that AG1 presents himself very scientific, right? And Joe Rogan is he just talks on podcasts and he goofs around.
Yeah.
But he talks about the science behind health a lot.
Right.
So the message actually lines up. But for Liver King and Tesla, that makes no sense. There's no through line messaging there. Right? So
yeah. Okay. So and maybe I want to tie that into branding. So say a company or say a person is coming up and they're trying to decide how to kind of figure out how to brand themselves, and maybe kind of expatiate what branding is and what branding isn't, because there's a lot of confusion there. As you say, when I met you, I was like, hi, I'm a battery scientist. That's in a sense was my brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder how you would suggest people approach branding and how you apply that towards marketing.
Okay, so it's really easy to conflate a lot of this stuff, but I should say this. A lot of this branding stuff, there's a lot of theories out there. There's all kinds of, stuff that's just, it's all up here, it's not real, right?
Right.
But to bring it back to a real simple point, it's really just how do you introduce yourself? So I like to bring this stuff back always to being more personified because it makes the most sense. It's very practical. If Microsoft walks into a bar, how do they introduce themselves? Right? This is brand. And then how do they dress? How does Microsoft dress? How do they speak? These are basically what makes up the brand effectively.
Right.
It's just how do you actually talk about yourself? Just at the most basic level. It doesn't have to be anything, super theoretical or whatever, right? You're just talking. This is what I look like. This is what I do. This is who I do it for. This is how I speak. There's a lot of confusion because when you think about a company, it's not a real thing. It's an entity that is a bunch of words on a document that are signed by some lawyers, effectively. So it's really hard to sometimes conceptualize it as being a person. And this is where a lot of people have a hard time, especially small business owners. That's a weird concept to think about your business as a person and how you brand it. But that's basically what it is. And so imagine instead of saying, this is my business, say like, this is my child. This is how I want my child to dress. This is how I want my child to behave in public. As weird as that is. I hope that might have been a little even too weird of an answer, but
man took it all the way to this is my child. This is how I want my child to dress.
Yeah, it's the simplest way to think about it, in my opinion, because it grounds it in some reality instead of just being up in the clouds. What's a brand? Oh, it's got to be this. It's got to be that. It's, in fact, actually, Virgil Abloh, when he passed away, he left behind a website that talked about branding a lot and how to build one. And I went to go check it out. And it's very simple. He didn't throw any crazy big things out there. It was all very simple, practical stuff you can Google. You just have to apply it.
Yeah.
That's all, right?
Yeah.
What branding isn't? You ask what branding isn't. Branding is not advertising, right? So you need to use branding in your advertising, but advertising itself is not the brand, right? And I think this is where a lot of people, sometimes that can get confusing for people. So usually what I see in that regard is people are afraid to do certain types of advertising because it doesn't align with what their brand looks like or talks like or whatever, right? But you got to kind of, in a way, think of advertising as being a little different. You're trying to get people to interact with your brand, so you can almost look at advertising as a form of just a friend calling people over to introduce you, in a way.
Right.
And you can have that leeway to do a few different things. So there's some great versions of doing ads, for example, that they might look really poorly done, or they might seem like something you would just see some random person on Instagram do, but it's from like, Microsoft again, or it's from like GM or these huge brands, but it just looks like some natural person doing something.
Yeah.
Obviously, these huge brands, their personality isn't some person, some Utah mom from TikTok making a making a video, right? That's
Yeah.
not what GM is. But
Right.
GM can utilize doing those types of ads to bring people in to come introduce themselves to the brand and get to know it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be too worried about what people are going to think because they don't even know you. That's part of the reason why you're doing the advertisement in a way.
Right.
Or they're coming to know a certain product that you've done. So don't conflate, I guess, advertising with branding. Don't conflate, this is going to sound really tricky, I guess, but don't conflate marketing with branding either. Because the branding is supposed to be about what the entity is, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
so yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I mean, if you were done, I was gonna kind of switch that into. Obviously, we've kind of mentioned the Liver King. We just sprinkled a little bit of that in there. But there's also, it's a general thing with the fitness industry as a whole, where there's basically a lot of widespread steroid use, and people portray themselves as, oh, you know what, I'm working out, I got this by going to the gym 20 times a week or whatever. And I wonder how you perceive is it important for people to be genuine in their marketing and in their branding, or is it just a matter of you keep your mess in a cupboard, as long as nobody sees it, this is what marketing is, right?
Yeah. Well, there are so many great liars out there
Yep.
that sell stuff. They sell
Yep.
all kinds of stuff, right? Okay, so Liver King is interesting in this aspect again because I would argue he presented himself as being genuine, at least earlier in the days,
Yeah.
even though he was probably lying about all that stuff for a long time, right? But he presented himself as being genuine, and that sold. And now, from last I saw, he presents himself as being a liar, and that still sells. So
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
So would you have to be genuine? Do you have to be a liar to sell anything? No, you can pretty much make it up. What you need to have are people who care about you and what you represent, liar or not, I guess. Like
Right.
when people deliver King, they're fulfilling like an emotional need or something interesting about what he represents that they're intrigued by. So even though
Yeah.
they've lied, even though he's lied rather, they're still intrigued by the stuff he's making because they're there for that. Or
Yeah.
they're there for what he represents.
Yeah.
Will they buy anything from that point on? That's hard to
That's a
say. I don't know
different
what numbers
story,
are
right?
like.
Yeah.
They might not. Or some people might still anyways. Might be like, yeah, he lied about this, but the science on this other thing still makes sense, so I'll buy it.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't really matter too much, but in the end, I will say this. Probably better to be real and genuine than to lie overall because eventually it seems like most lies come to light. For example, Diddy.
Oh, you went there. All right, let's go. Let's go.
Well, what are people saying? Diddy did it.
Diddy
Right?
did it.
Diddy
Oh
did it.
man, that's 50
Diddy,
Cent though. That's 50 Cent doing.
yeah. But you know what? 50 Cent's hilarious. 50 Cent's
He
hilarious,
is
actually.
hilarious. He is so funny.
But you got to think, like, okay, so P. Diddy's a really interesting case study in the highest level of this all going wrong, right? Because he basically built most, or I shouldn't say most, at least half of the hip hop industry,
Yeah.
right? He owns a lot of that.
Yeah.
And he built this up over decades. And yeah, people said weird stuff all along. If you go back far enough, there's people making weird comments all the way back in the day and whatnot. But
Oh really? I didn't know that, but carry on.
yeah,
That.
there's people that have there's a famous, if you know Jay-Z and Nas, they had a beef, I guess, like
Okay.
in the 2000 or 1999 or something like that. And in the
Yeah.
diss track, Nas is talking about, or I should say Nas, or Nas rather, he talks about some of those weird things that Jay-Z and P. Diddy do and whatnot. He makes fun of it. And I
Ooh,
think if you go back
scandalous.
far enough, yeah. And
Yeah,
that's all the way back then. And I think there's some more stuff even before then. There's been these weird things. And if we look into the Liver King's world and universe, if we really wanted to go that deep into the Liver King stuff,
yeah,
I'm sure we would probably find a few people that were questioning some things, and maybe some people on his closer circles, but a little bit on the fringe might know a few weird things that he's done and whatnot. Usually there's a track here. P. Diddy's stuff all blew up because he effectively was lying and tried to keep too many things a secret, and with too many people. Hundreds of
mm,
people were involved in all this stuff. Like that's just
yeah.
hard to keep a wrap on.
Unless you're Donald Trump. Unless you're Donald Trump.
But I don't know. Would it even count? Because I mean, like, wait, he tried to pay off Stormy Daniels, and that came out to light, and he's trying to do a bunch of other stuff, and that stuff comes out to light, I guess. So
Yeah, dude,
I
nobody's
guess what I'm
catching
trying
that
to say is,
guy.
yeah, he Diddy built an industry out of a lot of lying. However, it still is profitable. He still makes tons of money, and
Yeah.
that's not going to stop because he's built an engine that kind of survives beyond him. So, yeah, I don't think it really matters that much, to be honest. But you'll probably have an easier life if you don't lie.
Mm. So, and I mean, I'll tie that into someone that seems to be doing everything right at this point. Taylor Swift. What is she doing right? Why do so many people just love that girl?
I honestly was a fan of hers for a while. I don't know. I have this weird thing personally where, like, once somebody gets too big, I'm always like, ah, boring now. You know? I don't know what that is. I swear, I'm not a hipster, but
That's so funny. Man's like, I swear I'm not a hipster.
yeah. But I mean, people have been saying that she's probably the closest thing to Michael Jackson that we've had since Michael Jackson, right? In terms of just global fame and people worshiping her and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, for real.
How did that all happen?
Yeah.
I've not done a case study on it. I couldn't tell you how exactly it happened, but I don't believe that she's very genuine. That's for sure.
Oh, interesting.
I think there's aspects of her personality and what she does that are very genuine, and she can make those things shine very well. Because at the end of the day, she's a performer, so she can be 100% genuine. You don't want to go on stage and you're crying and you're upset, because that's what Kanye West does. Most people don't like him. Oh,
you're not playing today. You're just giving everybody the axe. Let's go.
Hey man, I'm standing on the sidelines. I'm watching the game. That's all that's going on right now.
All right.
Okay. So Kanye's out there. And Kanye obviously lies a bunch too, but he's definitely a bit more honest with his emotions in the moment, right? I would think people like Taylor Swift, they don't do that because they can't. Honestly, it's a bad look if you go out to an arena of 100,000 people and you're crying and complaining for 20 minutes while everybody just gave you like $1 billion to be there. That doesn't look great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think for people like her, there's elements of her personality that she's going to be genuine, but it's still a performance at the end of the day. So she can't fully be genuine. She can just only show aspects of it. So there's going to be some kind of covering up, let's say, of maybe how the sausage is made.
Right.
But how she got that big? I mean, she had a lot of scandals. There's a couple of interesting things actually. She had a harassment case, like some sort of sexual harassment case, a long time ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Where this radio guy like touched her butt when they were doing a photo or something like that.
Oh.
And this guy had a history of doing that, and she sued him for literally just $1 just to make the point.
Oh wow.
She did stuff like that made people feel like, oh, she's a good person, she's genuine, she's real. That's a good stance. And you know what? I personally believe she might have actually felt that way. Like I'll give her all the credit for that. But those moments, they add something to the kind of tapestry of an artist that you are, or an entity, right? Like those are like it's a milestone moment. Yeah, she got a certain amount of Grammys, a certain song popped off. people like the music, but they kind of remember the spectacle more, right? Like when Drake and Kendrick and J. Cole and all those people, when they get old and they pass away or whatever, we're gonna remember that beef they had. We're not gonna necessarily remember all the music, but we're gonna remember that one moment because it was crazy and it was big. And it was a whole thing that involved everybody. Even though they have classics.
Yeah, no, that kind of ties into the fact that, you know, a lot of artists will because we understand the importance of drama and the importance of basically the experience, so to speak, and you have a lot of like artists and stuff sort of creating. I personally think the Drake and Kendrick thing isn't real. I think it's just marketing, but then obviously the media runs with that stuff, you know.
Well, just to tie the point in though, this is all those moments, those events that happen, they all tie into the narrative, which is one of the core tenets of a business that I was talking about before.
Right.
And so that helps propel some of the marketing and some of the branding further to make people interested and be like, oh, what is this about? Taylor Swift sued some guy that had a history of sexual harassment and, you know, defeated him. That adds a lot to the narrative and to the brand of why you should give a crap about her and why she's good and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things.
Yeah. So obviously, in terms of, I'm going to bring it into like politics now. I kind of dropped in Donald Trump there. One of the things that that's going for him, I would say right now. I'm not saying he's going to win or nothing, but you know, one of the things that going for him, and to some extent, if you compare that to our Canadian system here, one of the things that's going for Pierre Poilievre is just that, you know, that very boisterous, that very out there kind of way about them. You know, Poilievre with his kind of constant criticism of the incumbent government, and Trump with his whole perspective of the haunted, you know, the system is against me kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how you assess the marketing in those particular situations.
Well, politics has some of the biggest marketers in the world working on that stuff.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's like big league, you know.
Yeah.
I would kind of argue from the individual marketing strategist perspective, doing politics at a high level from a marketing career standpoint is probably the A league compared to doing stuff for really big brands.
Yeah.
Just because it's so much more involved and so much more intense. So from what I see of people like Donald Trump and Pierre, again, we take it back to those simple tenets. You have product, you have narrative, you have packaging, and then you have distribution. So, okay, what's the product? Pierre is a conservative party leader. And what's the packaging? He's supposed to be the everyman. He's relatable. He's not the everyman, rather. He's the man who is just one step above you, so he can lead you, but he's relatable to you like one of your best friends are. And you look up to him in a weird way, right?
Yeah, it's a sneaky thing he does there, but carry on.
It's very subtle. Doing that well is very hard, by the way. It's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
So it's impressive, honestly. And that's probably one of the breakthroughs for him in terms of just kind of getting more prominence. But beyond that, you also have the narrative behind it. And this is probably the biggest driver for a lot of politicians that I see. Everything builds on itself, right? So when I talk about product and packaging and whatnot, you could almost look at those as being kind of stepping stones. Good product. Okay, so is he a good politician? That's debatable. I don't have any real opinions I feel like sharing because honestly, I don't really follow it that much. But is he a good politician? Is he good at speaking? Yeah, he's a good speaker for sure. Okay, great. What's the narrative that he's going after? Does he have a good narrative? Okay, so he's talking a lot about making housing affordable and kind of going against all the taxation and whatnot. Okay, that's a really good narrative. A lot of people care about that. Okay, great. What's the packaging like? Well, he's confident. He's dressed well. He's sharp in the mind, but he's very relatable and humble. At least that's how he presents himself. Right. Okay, that's good pack. Okay, now the distribution. What is that? He's getting on all these shows. He's got his own YouTube channel where they do a lot of analysis of stuff, good breakdowns.
He's calling Justin Trudeau wacko in the House of Commons. I don't know if you heard that. That's good marketing.
That's good marketing. So these little sound bites, what they do is they give his base or other people that aren't really sure about him a view into his window. So it's advertising in a way. So they go out there and he says something crazy in the House of Commons, and that post that they do a short and it goes viral, right? And people are like, oh, that's hilarious. It's all diss tracks and beef again, you know? It's he owned Justin Trudeau. He said something hilarious and people kind of get on his side. But that only works really in terms of winning and being a well-known figure in politics if you have the other 3 steps down, right?
Yeah.
So product, narrative, packaging. Same with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, he has a lot of those things down that work for his base of people, and he has the narrative of, again, you brought up being hunted and being against the system and whatnot. These are all that's an underdog story, and everybody gets kind of an underdog story.
For sure.
So in politics, having a really strong narrative is probably the most important thing. And the second most important thing is, can you deliver the narrative well? That's what I see. And when I see guys like that, everything else is just it's just all the systems that make it work. You got a young guy who's on shorts, who knows how to cut things up properly and put them out there. You have a guy who knows how to make videos. You have a guy who can book you certain spots so you can talk more and whatnot. And I got to be honest, I haven't seen a single full-length clip of Pierre where I've seen him actually tell. I've only ever seen like the highlights and the shit talking, and I think it's hilarious.
Yeah,
great.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I cared more about politics, I probably would check it out. And I have some friends who actually know a bit more about him, and I have some friends that know a bit more about Trudeau and whatnot, because they kind of care about that.
Yeah.
Me, as a marketer, I appreciate the spectacle. You know,
we all do. Yeah. No, where I wanted to go with that is, obviously everybody at this point has seen the flags with the F Trudeau things and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people now blame, obviously, whether true or untrue, they blame Trudeau for the housing crisis. They blame for the economic situation. I don't know. They blame him for everything. But how does, if you were on the marketing team of Justin Trudeau, how does he turn that around? And I'll tell you what they're doing at the moment, because I don't know if you're following the politics, but I like that stuff, so I follow it a little bit, right? Okay. And what Trudeau has been doing is just basically he's been creating this really landmark policies. So the $10 a day childcare is one they're pushing a lot. They just basically did the whole dental care thing for certain people. They're trying to kind of push certain policies now, knowing that kind of thing, when it starts to filter down to people, maybe a little bit of money gets sprinkled into their pocket right around election time, if you know what I mean. That they're trying to kind of change the perspective. That's what they're doing at the moment. But I wonder how you assess that and how you would go about it.
The thing that I can kind of overlap this with in business is Trudeau is kind of like Friendster, and Pierre's kind of like Facebook, in that.
Okay, I need you to clarify that. Yeah,
Friendster's trying to hang on for dear life to be a relevant contender, a product that people want to use, that people care about. And Facebook is a cool, new, interesting thing, a whole new way to engage, a whole new way to think about the way of going about social media and talking to people. The way that Trudeau presents himself and the way Pierre does is Pierre is looking to be opposite to Trudeau in most ways, at least from a presentation standpoint. And the way he speaks is different. The way he tries to position the idea of communications and certain ideas, he tries to do it differently from them. So he looks this new, interesting upstart company that's, oh, wow, this is a whole new way of doing politics. Yeah. And Trudeau, he's being looked at and kind of, from what I've seen, acts like more of that thing that we all know and are familiar with and are tired of.
Yeah.
Politics is really hard to do long term, because eventually
People hate
people will
you.
just remember. Yeah, people just hate you. It's very rare when you find somebody that you like for a long term, and it really just comes back to basic human biology and psychology. We remember negative things more than we remember positive things.
Yeah.
So over a long enough stretch of time, there's no way in hell any politician gets every single thing right for every single person that they are serving.
Right.
So over time, one thing goes bad, another thing goes bad, and all these things just stack up. It's inevitable. It's
Right.
inevitable that eventually, at the end of what Justin's been in power for a long time.
2 terms now. It's been 2 terms, so that would be 8 years, I want to say, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but they had some weird re-election thing that they were kind of rigging the timelines with.
Oh, the midterm thing, the way they called like a midterm election at some point.
Yeah, that kind of like recycled the time limit that he had, because I think he was coming up to the end of it soon. Okay, well, the point is over a long enough stretch of time, the people are just looking at all the things you've done wrong. They remember some good things, and some people and some groups remember certain good things, and they'll try to fight for you and whatnot, right? But over time, it just looks like you've done 50 things wrong and a couple things right. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant to the people, because they just don't remember all the good little things that you've done. And then so you have this new upstart guy that looks really cool and interesting, and he's a clean slate to most people. So he's not done anything wrong, which looks better than the guy who has done something wrong. They don't know if he's going to be great, but they know he hasn't done anything wrong yet. And so that's refreshing.
Yeah.
So I would say for Justin, like, you got to try and present yourself as a new way of doing things, almost like a rebrand, I think, is what he would need, to be honest. Because at this point, all of that he's doing is kind of tarnished based on the way people perceive him for the last, mostly through COVID, I would argue.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because, you know, I guess as a politician, you develop a thick skin, but dude, people were going in. Oh, like, it's probably still toxic. Like, even when he had the whole like divorce thing, like people were talking about his kids. And I'm just like, guys, since when are we these people? Sure, you hate his politics, but you're attacking his kids. You're saying, you know, all sorts of things about his marriage. And I'm just, social media is wild, man. Social media is just wild. But I want to tie that into disinformation and propaganda, because that is also marketing, right? And there's people use that as a tool, and I wanted you to talk about disinformation as a tool. How can people kind of protect and be wiser to what disinformation is, and kind of filter out what they're getting on the internet these days?
Right. Well, yeah, PR, propaganda rather. That's a tricky one. People use it for good and bad. I guess when you say propaganda, you're really talking about the nefarious use cases of it, right?
Oh, so I've often always perceived it as the nefarious uses, but what's a good way to use propaganda? I mean, it's always good for somebody, but when is propaganda ever good? I guess is what I'm trying to understand.
Okay, propaganda. When is it good? Well, some people like to just say all marketing is propaganda, and I guess
that is true.
I guess technically, it might be technically accurate. I have to double check the definition, but I think it started out of public relations. Got its start from propaganda, and they changed the name and all kinds of weird stuff to basically being public relations to make it sound nicer. But some people look at marketing as all being propaganda, and yeah, it might be technically true. We'll have to double check the definition on that. But when is it good? I guess it depends on who you are, really. That's the only way to say it, because there's people that hate Ryan Reynolds doing Mint commercials, right? There's people that hate that kid.
That's so funny.
It's pretty harmless, and he seems like he's got some really good promotions out there. You know, like I wish I had those phone plans accessible to me. They seem very cheap and whatnot. So that's great for most people, but there's some people who hate that, and there's probably people from AT&T and Bell and Telus who hate that. So I think it really depends on who you are. Are there ways to do marketing that is inoffensive? Yes, but then nobody gives a crap about what you're doing or what you're saying, what your product is.
Yeah.
So if we look at Ryan Reynolds doing those ads, I mean, they're pretty. Those are probably some of the most likable ads anybody could ever watch.
Right.
And there's going to be somebody who doesn't like them. I don't know when you came to Canada, but there was a really famous commercial called The House Hippo. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it's funny. The government of Canada made a series of commercials back in the early 2000s about misinformation and propaganda, which is kind of ironic now. But
Right.
But what they were doing is they were trying to educate mostly kids on not believing everything you see on TV. That was the basic premise behind it. And they had this thing called the Canadian House Hippo. And when I watched it, I was young. Everybody who's been around my generation who watched it always wished it was actually true, because it was basically about how these little hippos live in these houses and they're like mice and they like to eat peanut butter and all these things. And the commercial looks real. It looks like a real hippo the size of a mouse in a house walking. Everybody actually loves that commercial, right? That's good, and it's got a good message. But there are going to be some people who might say, "Oh, I don't think governments should be making commercials about misinformation or propaganda like that, because who's the government to say this or say that, or they're a bunch of liars themselves. They're just trying to get you to believe their thing." So it's kind of a difficult one to ask or answer, really, because it's so up to the interpretation of the person watching it. Yeah. I would say overall, if you genuinely liked it and if it made logical sense to you and it was genuinely something that benefited you, then it was probably fine.
But see, here's the thing though, with the way algorithms work now, if we tie it back to social media, it's like it's very easy to get stuck in like this kind of vacuum where, because with algorithms, right, whatever you watch, you tend to see more of that. There's a lot of confirmation bias to the data that you see, right? Your YouTube recommended or your TikTok for you is very different to what somebody else probably sees on their thing based on their watch history, right? And a lot of that is just you could go through a whole lifetime, just like getting information that maybe doesn't necessarily make any sense. Obviously, we've kind of shit talked Trudeau a little bit, so I'm going to say something for him here. But the carbon tax, it's something everybody hates right now, right? But the point is there needs to be a strategy, whether that strategy is the best strategy or not. There needs to be a strategy for us to deal with, climate change and environmental problems, right? There needs to be one, right? Whether it's to our economic detriment or not, across the whole world, there needs to be a strategy to deal with that, right? But what happens is the framing of that by the opposition almost makes the carbon tax look like the problem facing Canadians, right? And that's literally basically the platform that Poilievre is running on, which is Axe the Tax, right? Very, very, very nice. It has a nice kind of ring to it. But okay, if you're axing the tax, what are you going to do then? Right? So, but if someone's sitting there, it's gonna go like, maybe one of these F Trudeau guys are gonna go, okay, this is the reason why I have all these problems in my life. And they're probably gonna hear all the time, axe the tax, axe the tax, axe the tax. This is gonna solve my problem. So it's just, in a world where algorithms exist, I guess we all just believe that we're just basically chewing on some propaganda. Is that all it is? We're just chewing on disinformation all the while.
I guess it depends on how self-aware and conscious you are as a person. I guess that's a spectrum, but I mean, to take it to the extremes, this is like QAnon and flat earthers, right?
Right.
They are in a vacuum, an echo chamber, more like, where they put ideas out and they get the same things reverberated back to them. They're in these
Right.
communities that talk about all this same stuff. How do you break that? That's been a problem with humans, not just algorithms, but algorithms definitely add a lot of fuel to that fire, because now you can find anybody in the world that believes the same thing as you, and then you can start your own groups and whatnot. The fundamental problem with changing that is you would have to change how stuff YouTube and Instagram make money, because
Mm,
their job is to make money by being interesting and keeping you on the platform and serving you ads. And if
yeah.
what that takes to do is feeding into your biases and your ego and all that other stuff, then they're going to
Yeah.
do it, because you're a stranger to them.
Yeah.
And every time you watch for 10 minutes, they make $1. So if we keep you on there for 5 hours, well, we just made a bunch of money.
Right.
So that's a hard thing to break. And the other hard thing too is people like it. That's hard.
Yeah.
People build these habits around it. They just doom scroll for hours, and well, okay, you have a bunch of people addicted to something, and now you're going to say, stop that, you're bad, and then you're going to take away the drug, and then you're going to try and change the drug from the people who
Mm,
make it that want to keep making a living. Like, there's a lot of things in this process that would have to change. That,
yeah.
but man, I don't even know where you would even begin, to be honest with that.
Anyways, so bringing it back to what Epsilon Venture Group does, I know we've kind of talked around about all these varying things and some of the strategies involving marketing there. I'm curious what the services that Epsilon offers are.
Right. We have a program. We have a program called the Business Starter Packages, where basically, if you just have an idea, we have a series of packages that you can go there, where we basically show you what you need depending on where you are and what we can do. And it's very, it's very affordable compared
Mm,
to a lot of other consulting out there. But I think they start at like $500 or $600, right? And
yeah.
that's like helping you set up a web page with the concept and some just general imagery and an understanding of your market and stuff like that,
Right.
and just getting it out there. And then all the way up to like forming the company itself and doing e-commerce and whatnot. This is a starter. Then if you
Right.
want to grow, the company, we have our main service, really, which is just offering partnership services, where we would come in and partner with you in the business, and we help you grow it from handling all the business end of the operations. So again, it's really good if you're a technical founder in particular. So you have this idea for a tech product, you're making it, but again, you're maybe not very business savvy or marketing savvy. We come
Yeah.
in and partner with you and help provide you those services, marketing, operations, sales, accounting, stuff like that, and
Yeah.
help you get all up off the ground and get your product out there into the world.
Wow. Okay. I'd like maybe if you could share one story of a business that came to you and how you were able to, and what the success stories, and maybe share a success story with us in terms of how you've applied sort of your strategies and what the result was for that particular company.
Yeah, sure. Well, honestly, right now we're working on one one project that's trying to revolutionize the way we do photo sharing, which is really interesting. And we're taking them through the very basics of what I talked about a while ago, which was just putting up the web page and driving traffic.
Mm,
So, and in all honesty, this is happening literally in the moment. So I don't have all the data, and I will share a different story with you. But
right.
this is somebody who has an idea. They're a technical founder. They want to try and do photo sharing differently, and so they need to figure out what is that and how do they do it and who wants it. And so we're
Right.
literally going through processes right now where we build the web page and we drive traffic, but we're doing that times 4. So we're doing several different pages, talking to
Mm,
different audiences and driving traffic from different sources. to see who would be the most interested in this type of product, and then building out some more features based on that and slowly getting it out to the market that way.
Interesting.
So in an example like that, what would the success be? It's we have 4 audiences we're testing. If one of them works, then great. We can start building in that direction.
Right.
And go from there. And for somebody in that position as a co-founder who's more technical, it's helpful to figure out, okay, well, I have this thing I've built and I have a general idea, but I don't know where to take it.
Yeah.
Well, this is where we start applying some of like just the pragmatic methods that we have for finding an audience for what you've built, because ultimately you want to build something that people use. That's what most people do stuff for.
Right.
So you're making this podcast because you want people to listen to it.
Yeah.
Like, it's very basic in that sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just apply those pragmatic approaches to that. And on the back end, we're doing a bunch of research into the different audiences, into the different markets, into the different places to drive traffic, whether it's from Facebook or it's from YouTube or it's from Pinterest or whatever. And then they come in, and from there we do our assessments on how many people converted, and we try to talk to them. In this case, it's a bit more event-based, so we're trying to get the people to use this in actual events as well. So these are all things that we provide and cover that, as a technical founder, would be too much time for you to figure out how to learn or do because you're busy working on the product.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how we come in and we help people, and then from there it's just scaling up the operations. Because we work with a lot of startups, startups come and go. They fail, they succeed. Maybe certain things that we do help them launch, and then for whatever reason later things take a turn or whatever. We don't always have full control of everything.
Yeah.
But there was a bit of a funny one. We worked on this blockchain company. We do a lot of work in the blockchain too.
Interesting. Yeah.
We do Web 2 stuff. People to say Web 3 stuff. We pretty much usually work on tech, but we work on other stuff just if it's interesting, really.
Right.
But we worked on this blockchain project, and the highlights are, we helped them raise over $1 million, and we launched this token that they had and helped them create their own blockchain even.
Yeah.
But the thing about Web3 is it's so fickle. It's such a fickle industry that not a lot of people fully understand. And in the end, the thing that we found the hardest was to educate people on how to use the product.
Yeah.
So I highlight this because sometimes it's easy to make some money, and it's easy to build something, and it's hard to make it sustaining, even when the market looks good. So this is all about what the product is at the end of the day. So in this case, it was about synthetic yield farming, which is a topic that is not really worth getting into. It's extremely esoteric, and that was part of the problem.
Right.
So in this case, some of the things that we helped do were to rally around the team behind the project. It was mostly volunteer-based. People believed in the project a lot, so that wasn't so bad. But it was organizing all that. And then we needed to work with some influencers in the space, and work on some promotions and some social media content and whatnot that just kind of brought awareness to it. And so in Web3, one of the things you can do is you can offer people your token, which is very close to pretty much being equity in a company.
Right.
So we can offer people that en masse, and we can use different promotional tools to get people to check us out and look at stuff. So we do a bunch of different competitions about learning the project and earning some tokens from that, or creating content for the project and earning some tokens for that.
Yeah.
And these all went quite well. They all got tons of impressions and views and whatnot. And by the time we came to launch the token, we'd amassed all these people, and it was really easy to raise like over $1 million for a pretty esoteric project. And then after that, a little bit, we launched the actual product itself. So we went through all the theory. We tried to find the people, right? So again, we're talking about, let's say, the web page again, right? So we build the web page, we build the ideas out, we put that out there, we advertise that, people come, they're interested. Then we launch the thing that's going to drive revenue, which was the token in this case. People bought it, and that made over $1 million.
Yeah.
And then we launched the actual product itself, and we had all these people there. So 3,000 people started on it right away. And that was great for a while. And then in Web3, markets change, and there's some big crashes that happened, and it wiped the project out. Right. So this is a success story for a lot of reasons.
Because of all the stuff you had to put in place, you got some buy-in, but obviously stuff happens, right?
Yeah, and you learn from it too. And this is it's a good example of the market that I was talking about before.
Mm.
When we got into it, the market was great, and then it changed, and it destroyed the product and the brand behind it. And that happens in normal life. It usually happens over decades. In Web3, it happens over months, because all the projects are so financially tied to the market in a very unique way that's not normal to here. Like when the pandemic happened here, grocery prices went skyrocketing, and suddenly products were unavailable. Right. That's a market change. That's a really market change. If you were looking at starting a snack company during COVID, you would not be wise to do so, right? Because that would not be good. We'd have to wait it out, look at the trends and whatnot.
Yeah.
But in Web3, for example, it's what pretty much it is. It pretty much is the market. All the projects on there's very few that are not tied to a coin.
Yeah.
So it's a really good example in the real world of what happens when markets change and how that affects the company and the brand and all that stuff. And it's just kind of how it is.
Yeah. So something interesting you said earlier, and that kind of presents a different dimension to what you just said. As a venture architect, you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said that you sometimes take a stake in these companies that you market, right? Yeah. And obviously that introduces a different dimension, because now your money is in these companies. You're invested in their success, right? So and I wonder how does that change your marketing strategy? And especially with nascent companies, with venture capital level companies that are just getting their first angel or whatever. Obviously, you're going into it knowing that there's a good chance that the stats there. I just interviewed a guy that was a financial analyst not too long ago, but the stats there are not very good. Maybe 10% or maybe at a very optimistic, maybe 20% of them make it. Right?
Very optimistic.
Yeah. So how does that change the way you view these companies then when you're designing your marketing strategy?
Well, there's so many stats on this stuff. I think I read one time that a VC, like a venture capitalist or an angel investor, has a chance of making their money back by 5 or 10% or something like that, right? But they only need one to hit for it to make up for all of it plus more, right? So
that is fair.
That's just a statistical game they play. For us, it changes everything about how we think about the company, because we're looking at this from a point of, this is kind of ours now, and we want it to last. So it's not just running a simple campaign for the summer. Right. If we just were doing normal marketing agency stuff, we would work with the company for 3 to 6 months. We'd create some campaigns, and if it went well, then we'd re-up and do another campaign, or we wouldn't. Sometimes they do well. There's some agencies that do really good on their campaigns, and then the company wants to take a different creative direction, and they stop working with that ad agency, even though the campaign did amazing. Yeah. It's just people make decisions all the time that aren't always great. So it's fine in that case. But from our perspective, we look at this as being a lot more long-term, because at the end of the day, what our goal really is to build a portfolio company. And if we could have 100 companies in there that are all, they just have really solid business fundamentals and business models that just work. That would be our crowning achievement, really, is, hey, we've amassed this set of companies that are legit companies that have good business models and people like them, and it's great. So we always look at it from that perspective of, will this thing be around in 10, 20 years? Is it possible? Is that really possible? And if not, then our approach is, maybe we shouldn't work together, or maybe we can do a short-term thing.
Yeah.
But
what's your tool for assessing whether a company is going to be here in 10, 20 years?
Well, there doesn't seem to be a great science on this yet, to be quite frank. But usually, sometimes we could try to invest in some senses in like the founders. So maybe the product isn't going to be great. Maybe the product won't be around forever, but maybe those guys are so good that we can help them create something different, and we can keep going.
I see.
Right. Or maybe there's just some very simple mechanics inside of the business model that make it easy. Well, something like Facebook, for example, I bring up as a overall generally good business, because you have this large amount of users that want to use it because it actually gives them a certain level of utility.
Yeah.
They need to use as how they feel. So the biggest driver for Facebook is probably Messenger right now. That's probably their number one. That's probably the number one tool. I sometimes will I use that more than I text by a lot.
Oh,
right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of my friends are like that too. Like we all have each other's numbers, but we all just use Messenger. So there's a lot of people who operate that way, and I think Messenger is one of their biggest tools now. Obviously, they're in a different game where they're buying other companies. So they bought Instagram and they bought WhatsApp, and that helps them a lot.
Yeah.
But when you're in something like that, what you're doing is you're buying out the competition, and you're increasing your user base and then applying more of your business model to it. So they have a good business model with advertising.
Yeah.
Most marketers in the world use Facebook for advertising, 99% of them, because the platform is so good at delivering ads, optimizing it well, and driving traffic at a very cost-effective rate that as an advertiser, it would almost be silly to not use it. It's almost bad practice at this point. They've done such a good job at making that such a good tool. And that came through making Facebook and their tools for consumers really good that they felt like they have to use it.
Yeah.
So those are some fundamental aspects to what Facebook is that make it seem like, okay, because of the general mechanics of how the product works, people want to keep using it. They want to come back. Advertisers want to use it to access those audiences because those audiences are engaged and they're there every day. These are two business models or two products that work coinciding for their business model that make it something that's going to probably last, because people are going to do advertising forever.
Yeah.
And there are some simple psychological hacks with Facebook and the way people use it that they kind of have some sort of habit that they've built into it.
Right.
Want to come back and use it. So those are good examples of some tech that makes sense, where there's a utility there, people want to use it, and they have a way to sell that data. You're using Google Meets right now.
Yeah.
For example, you probably use the search engine for Google. You probably go on YouTube. These are products that they've built that have a general utility to your life that make it really easy for you to do what you need to do. And there are some things that they've built that are habitual in nature that you want to come back and use them.
Yeah.
And then what they do is they sell you advertisements in certain slots.
Yeah. So
and again, most advertisers will use it. So these are just simple utilities. It's basically, we want something that is a utility that people genuinely feel they need or want to use. And it's not just a to have. It's, oh, I need to use this. You don't think about like whether you want a car or not. You just think, I need to have a car.
Right.
That level.
Right. So I'm actually curious now, because I never quite thought about marketing from the perspective of you guys actually doing almost like financial analyst type things like that. So I'm curious, what's and you don't have to tell me the name of the company, by the way. What's the most interesting company in your portfolio right now?
Okay, interesting. There's an AI company that we're advising that's doing interesting stuff with predictions.
Okay.
So they basically are able to predict. It's they're kind of predicting how often somebody predicts something right. Yeah, it's really weird. It's like they use it for financial stuff mostly. So it's what's his name, Jim Cramer. Have you ever heard of him? He's got a thing called Mad Money.
Oh, I know that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they have this AI that takes a look at all the predictions that he's ever made, for example,
Yeah.
and it says which ones are right or wrong. But they can do this with any public statement. So
Wow. Okay.
you might say something on a YouTube video, and they can review, summarize the video, and figure out if your prediction came true or not. And on top of that, what they do is they build a feed, so you as a user can go onto their platform and save all of the people that you're following, and you get summaries of all this content. You also will get their predictions of whether stuff came true or not.
Right.
And so that's really interesting. The name isn't fully there yet in terms of what it's going to be, so I don't even have a name to give you.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. I'll say that.
Yeah. That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Andreas. I know we kind of stressed the conversation a lot more than what was scheduled, but I thank you for your patience, and I know I threw a few curveballs at you there that we're we're not in the plan. I kind of asked you certain questions about politics, and we went in all sorts of places in this conversation, but that's the way I like to do over here. So
all good.
So,
definitely a surprise, but really interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your time. And for you guys at home, if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe down below. Obviously, I'll link where you guys can find Epsilon Venture Group and, all the deets that, that you guys need to know. Thank you so much for your time today. So see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wolf of Young Street podcast. If you derived value from this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe. I would love to hear from you as well. So please comment your thoughts down below.